Call it. All hot, all hot, all hot. All right, everybody, let's get started. Welcome to the All Hot Podcast. My name is Matt Garland. I just got to read a disclaimer, and then we'll get into the introduction. The views and opinions expressed on the All Hot Podcast are those of individual speakers and do not reflect the official position of the City of Portland, the Portland Fire Department, or any affiliated agency. Produced and supported by IAFF Local 740, this podcast shares unedited stories and lessons that strengthen generational bonds, preserve the culture of the Local 740 and the Portland Fire Department. Listener discretion is advised. Strong language and real talk are part of the job. So with me today, we have IAFF Casey Bunker, current union president. He's just going to say a few words, and we'll get introducing Dana Asdourian.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As president of the Portland Firefighters Local 740, I want to take a moment to say how proud I am to see this podcast come to life. All Hot isn't just a catchy name. It's something every firefighter knows. It's the moment when we all gather around the table and share a meal and share our stories. This is what this podcast is about. Bringing our firehouse conversations to a new platform and passing along lessons, humor, and hard-earned wisdom from one generation to the next. Our job has always been about more than fighting fires and saving lives. It's about protecting each other, learning from those who came before us, and leaving the department a better place for those who come after us. This podcast has the potential to capture those values, to make sure the traditions, the knowledge, and the spirit of the firefighters of Local 740 continue to grow and thrive. A special thank you to Matt, who made this all happen, and thank you to Dana for being the first guest. You're both keeping our history alive and helping to build our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce one of the PFD's renowned historians, Dana Asdourian. Dana, we just got a few questions we're going to go over, and we're just going to have a conversation. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping things about the podcast, because this is the first one. As President Bunker already alluded to, the name All Hot Podcast comes from the concept when a meal is ready at the firehouse in the Portland Fire Department, you get on the Voca, the PA system, and you say, all hot, all hot, all hot. And that tells everybody in the station on duty to come together. It's time to sit down, share a meal, which inevitably turns to story time, which inevitably turns to passing information around the table. Some of it's reliable, some of it is not. But either way, it's a good time, and information gets moved around. And so from that concept, we want to take information from the past and previous generations and move it forward to current and future generations of the Portland Fire Department. And that's what we're trying to do in this podcast. So as of right now, there's no schedule to the podcast, so it's not going to be like every single week or every month. As things progress and things happen, we'll shoot podcasts and upload, and the members can partake whenever they want to. So that's the goal as of right now, is just get it recorded and then go forth from there. So it's also not just limited to historical stuff, although this is amazing, and I think the podcast will spend a lot of time trying to document the history of the fire department. You guys can see we're in the Fire Museum down here on Spring Street, and this is just an incredible place to be. Honored to shoot the first one here, but it's not just about the history. We'll have all kinds of different topics on the podcast, so stay tuned for all kinds of different opportunities. If you're listening and you have an idea that you would really like the podcast to cover, or you'd like to be a part of the podcast in some way, shoot an email to allhot740@gmail.com. That's allhot740@gmail.com. It's an email set up just for the podcast. You guys can send all of your any topics you want to cover or anything like that. If you have any complaints about the podcast, just email us straight to Casey Bunker. He's volunteered to handle all complaints.
Damage control.
Yeah, he's going to take care of it. You don't have to keep those out of the All Hot email. We're going to send those straight to the union president. He can take care of all that stuff. So. But anyway, I think that's about it. I just had some few basic questions. Sure. We're just going to go over some stuff and learn a little bit more about our history and our past. So, I think the first question I want to start with, Dana, is a very broad and really general question, but why should a member of the Portland Fire Department today be extremely proud of the past and the history that we have here at the fire department?
Well, the department started in 1768, so you can see how far back it goes. There's not many departments around that can have that history. And the thing I talk about, especially in this museum here, is that we call it 99.9% of the artifacts in here are from the Portland Fire Department.
Wow.
You know, I've been to a lot of different museums around the country and some in Europe, and a lot of them are artifacts of the region. That's what makes this museum stand out, is that this is all Portland stuff. You know, it's been passed on down from, well, when the PVFA started, which was the Portland Veteran Firemen's Association, started back in 1891. And they've been collecting this stuff over the years, and it's been collected and stayed in this collection, which is the Portland Fire Department's. So as you can see around, and people have been in here before, you can spend hours upon weeks and days. I mean, I've been coming in here for years, and this stuff, I'm still finding out that we never knew some of the stuff about, like I was explaining to you earlier about the fire down here on Pleasant Street at the Greek church. You know, I mean, and the history goes deep. Just, you know, not the fire department, but as I spoke there, that piece of history related back to Paul Revere's father. About the bells and stuff. And we've got a sword upstairs that belonged to John Wilkes Booth's brother, who hung around with the PVFA guys back in the late 1800s. So Portland's rich in history, and that's part of it. Is, you know, the members here, if they get involved in this, will understand how far their history goes back. You know, and there's not many departments that can say, well, this is all ours. And every picture, everything hanging on the wall has a story behind it. As you can see, the buckets, just the way the museum's set up. We set it up trying to, when we give tours, bring people from the start of the fire service in Portland, which was, you know, 1768 by the buckets, to the hand tub, to the steam, to mechanical. And every one of those periods of time have many stories that go with it. You know, and we try to keep it. Mike Deasy, the historian, is very, very sincere on keeping the history up. Upstairs, we've got record books back from the 1700s, maybe before that. But he keeps calculating everything. You know, from when the horses were at certain firehouses, when they were transferred, the men. You know, he's got a file on everybody that's been in the Portland Fire Department. So it's a department with a lot of tradition, a lot of pride.
So for anybody listening, we're at the Fire Museum on, what's the address here?
157 Spring Street.
157 Spring Street in Portland.
It's Old Engine Force Quarters, which was built in 1873. No, excuse me, 1837. Get my digits. It was built in 1837 and stayed an active firehouse. When it was first built, it served three functions. The upstairs was a girls' school for the West End. 150 girls went to school here. The downstairs was a place with a hand tub like this. And out back was the voting ward for the district, so people came here to vote.
Oh, wow.
And that stayed the same. The girls' school left back when I'm not sure the dates, that's why Mike's got all the dates right in his head. But they left when the first firemen started moving in here, because back in that day, they might have had 25, 30 runs with a hand tub. That's way back. But as the city built up and things started to grow, when they moved the horses in here, that's when the full-time men started coming.
Oh, okay.
Because the men had to maintain and take care of the horses, and it became a full-time firehouse. It closed in 1966. When they closed this house with Engine 4, moved it to Bram Hall, which was built, and they closed the Park Avenue station, which housed Engine 6 and Ladder 6, and they closed and moved to Bram Hall.
Okay.
So that's kind of the history of where this building was at the time, but it was 1837. So it's got some history to it. You know, this building's gone through a lot of weather over the years, and it actually, if the Great Fire of 1866 came this way, it probably wouldn't be here today, but it went the other way up towards Munjoy Hill. So,
do you guys have the map down here of all the, where is that? Is
the
that
map of where the fire was?
Yeah, the plot where it shows all the different...
it's over there on the 1866 wall.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna get we're just gonna go through the questions. I know you got some notes, so I'll just, we'll pose the questions and I'll just follow the questions, we'll have a conversation. But when future generations of the Portland Fire Department, years from now, look back and think about our history, what is something that you really want us to know? What's something you want them to talk about and think about the history of the department?
Well, again, it started, 1768, so that's, there's not a lot of fire departments. In New England, there are a lot of fire departments, but you go outside New England, there's a lot of departments that do not have that age with them. You go out west or go down south. This is a traditional New England city fire department. There's a lot of dedication to it. There's a lot of heritage to it, and as you were looking at those pictures, the family members seem to come back, from one generation to another.
Yeah.
And Portland's got a lot of generations that are, the same in the fire department here. So.
Yes, I guess you could say, like, when you join the Portland Fire Department, you're joining like over 250 years of history. You're joining something bigger than yourself.
Right, and a lot of families still connected by it.
Yeah.
My Dacey's got ancestors in it. I've got it, my great grandfather in here. Yourself, you've got your father here. So it's kind of it's a draw of generations.
Yeah.
And back in those days too, these firehouses, the guys that worked them came from these neighborhoods.
That's right.
As you can see, the limited parking out here, you get enough for 3 cars. Okay, and there were probably 5, 6 guys here, but they all walked to work back then too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
a different time.
different time, definitely.
So this question is more towards like you and your personal experience with the PFD and the time. But what's something about the Portland Fire Department that's changed drastically since you started, and then secondarily, what's something that stayed exactly the same?
Well, let's start talking when I first came in. I had a piece of paper at home, I couldn't find it. The pay is totally different. When I started, I want to give you the highball number. I was making $157 a week. That was working 2 10-hour days, 2 14-hour nights. Overtime was not heard of. There was no overtime. If you got held over, it's because you had a nor'easter coming in or a hurricane. Other than that, there was no overtime. The pay was a big thing. Hours have changed too. Before I came in, when I was riding with them in here, because I wasn't old enough to get hired, they were working 3 days, 3 nights, and 3 off. And then they went to the 2, and that's when they changed the shifts. They went from a 3 platoon system to a 4 platoon with the 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off. So the pay and the hours have changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And the pay has definitely changed. I remember guys when I came in 75, they were talking in the earlier 70s, they were making $137 a week. But the pay wasn't there. But most of the guys I talked to weren't here for the pay. If you were here for the pay, you were nuts.
It's still the same. That part stayed exactly
the money, the nuts. Yeah, the money part is just it was never here, but money was at least my concern when I got the job here. I just liked the firefighting world, and Portland was a good city to come into. Because I met a lot of the guys when I went to SMVTI at the time. They had the fire science program. That's where I met a lot of the Portland firemen. So then I was in the call company in South Portland, and I got permission to come over here and ride with the guys, and that was it. I never left. So it was nice after 2.5, 3 years of riding to get a paycheck my first day. So it was fun,
And you came in 75, right? 1975 is when you came in?
Right.
What year did you retire?
2006.
2006 you retired?
Yeah.
When you came in 75, how many fires were you guys going to, like, just per week? Like per week or per month?
It was hard to say, but you knew you were going to a fire.
Yeah.
In your 2 days, your 2 nights, you were going to go to at least one. But you normally went to more.
Yeah.
When you come in, you go to work, you'd say, okay, we know we're going to a fire. When's it start and when's it end? Because we were really busy.
Yeah.
And we talked back then. You were talking about the number of fires and the equipment. That was another point I wanted to make. A big change I've seen here, they've cut this. The city's growing again, but they're cutting.
Yeah.
They're cutting the fire service, which is playing Russian roulette in my book. Because, and I've heard people say, well, we don't have that many fires. And I really get pissed when I hear firemen say that. It's better if you haven't been to one yet, because it doesn't take 100 fires to get somebody hurt or killed.
It's true.
It just takes one. And when I came in, we had the 8 engines, 4 ladders, the rescue company, a fireboat, and the crash station. And we had, back then, okay, it was close to 300 guys on the job, because it was 4 to 5 men on a truck, and I watched that slowly get cut as time went on. Because if you had the 5th, okay, they would send him out, you know, and we had the coverage. You had 5 extra guys on a shift for the pool to fill vacancies of sick leave or vacation. And, you know, then as time went on, they went to 4. Now the 4th man was considered extra. So he got shipped out. And now you're down to the bare minimum of 3, and you can't ship anybody out.
Yeah.
There's no more, and 3 is just, 3 is getting the truck there, but not with a, you know, significant workload to put that truck. And I started looking around towards the end of it. We had all these trucks there. We're only using 1 or 2 of them, but you needed the men to run those to capacity.
Right.
Especially the pumps. The pumps got bigger. You know, you could deliver more water, but you didn't have the guys on that truck to be able to deliver that water.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you didn't have the manpower to efficiently use the
and
capacity
the equipment
that was there.
Yeah, and the equipment today is so much better. I mean, when I first came in, we had, of all the companies, I think we had 8 of the companies were open cab. And there's not too many people that had the privilege or been put out there in the shed riding in an open cab. And I always used to say, why do we ride in open cabs? Well, to do a proper size up when you get there. Well, I used to say that during a blizzard. How the hell can you do a proper size up when you're froze? With a monsoon rain in the summer. How can you, you're already soaked. So it made no sense, the open cab theory, because over in Europe, they've had closed cabs basically the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, I always compared it with a family of 5 buying an El Camino for the family vehicle. Mom and dad ride up front, the kids ride in the back, you know, and they're exposed to the elements. And that was a big change. Riding around in open cabs, man, it was different.
Especially in the Northeast.
Yeah, especially as cold as it gets up here.
Yeah.
And then the tradition went on that we couldn't get off the back step. We had to ride the back step because you had to. Why? You have to.
Yeah.
You know, we got the cabs that were partially closed with the roof now.
Yep.
They wouldn't let you ride up under that. No, you had to be on that back step. To this day, I cannot figure out why, but you had to. It's cold, you're freezing. We'll put the canvas, you know, the canvas that covered the hose bed.
Yeah.
Put that over your heads, keep you warm. Christ, you get carbon monoxide poisoning from the leaks. And there were gasoline engines a lot, and the carbon monoxide coming up through that. So, you know, that was another thing. You know, some other things that changed too is no EMS back then. There was no EMS. Portland Fire Department. They had their rescue. They were the first guys that started responding because they got some of the EMTs, and then they started responding. But when I first came in, the police department did all the ambulance work. They had a van.
Yeah.
Basically picked people up and took them to Main Men. You know, and again, the Portland Fire Department slowly got involved. Back in the late 60s with the resuscitators. Yep. They had those on the ladders and stuff, and there'd be resuscitator calls, and they'd go. But other than that, the EMS was not really part of the fire service back then.
Yeah, that's definitely a big change from
now,
where we're at today
right.
in 2025.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing too. I see sometimes fire departments being overwhelmed with the EMS, and they forget firefighting's still their primary job. You know, and if you're not training and keeping up on that, and everything's switching over to EMS or some other stuff, you get yourself in trouble. Because now you're not keeping up with the basics. And you hear me talk about that all the time. Keeping with the basics. Because if you forget the basics, there's no sense of going up further in training because you don't even know what the hell the basics are. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's also a piece of the start of the podcast was in going through, you know, my career. I've always been told the reality is we do tons of EMS, we do not a lot of firefighting. So for us, the training and the information is stored in the previous generation.
Mm-hmm.
Folks like you, like my dad, and those generations. And the podcast, I hope, is a chance to, like, it's not just a PowerPoint presentation training, but it's a like, you what was life like back then? What was it like on some of your first fires? What did you do, in various scenarios and stuff like that? So the podcast is, we're starting with history today, but I hope it gets into the details eventually of like tactics back then. Were you guys doing VES when you came in and said?
No, that stuff came along as time went along. I mean, when I used to ride in other cities, I learned about different tactics. But as I spoke before, I came back and I was called into the office one day and they wanted to know what I was doing in these other cities. I was riding and learning. Well, I was told basically, don't think you bring any of that shit back here because we do it this way. Okay, I didn't mean to step on any toes, but geez, there is a bigger fire department somewhere. There's always one bigger than the one you're in.
Yep.
And they do things the same, basic things, but they also do things
slightly different.
That are different, and sometimes it's to the advantage of being different. It makes the job safer and easier. So, but
yeah, absolutely. Well, so I guess the next question has the PFD and Local 740 have a strong culture of brotherhood and pride. What moments or traditions do you think best represent that spirit of pride in our culture?
Keeping the camaraderie is a big thing. Keeping the department, everybody on the same page. I was always for that. The safety of the job. That's a goal that should be always priority and on the top. The guys, the schedule, and I'll say it right up front, I was not a fan of this 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I made the statement back when they were trying to initiate it, we're gonna lose the camaraderie that we had. And we have. I saw it before I got out, I worked the 24s, but I saw everybody just fading off their own way. Before, we worked the 2 10-hour days, the 2 14-hour nights. We were more together all the time, and that held over into the 4 days off. There was always family functions going on, the whole group was together. There were get-togethers, the whole group was together. And I saw as when we went to the 24s, when you get 5 days off, you're saying to the guy, see you next week, and that's the way it went. You didn't see the guys like you always did. And that, to me, started chipping away at the camaraderie and the togetherness of the department.
Yeah.
Because each group back in those days, they hung together. I remember, like, one night, it was our swing night, that's the night, your last day, and your swing night was considered your long day off because you had to come in the next night. We called around and said, we're having a Christmas party next swing night at the Sportsman's Grill for the group.
Yeah.
When we got down there, we had 30, 35 guys showing up.
Wow.
After work, because it was our swing night.
Yeah.
And we got in there, they set up the whole place. Where the bar was, they set it up, they took all the tables, put it together for us. And we were there probably 6 to 8:39, and there's 30 guys there, 35 guys there, and I never saw that happen again when we switched the hours. Because guys would just go home and that was it, and that to me was a little, from coming from that period of time, of the 2 days, 2 nights to the 24. They had more time off, but I saw that closeness slowly dwindle, so.
Was like American culture different like that? I mean, like, to state the obvious, there's no social media, no internet.
Oh yeah, it was totally different. Yeah.
So was like even non-fire service kind of like that? Like
everything was. I mean, today you want information, you pick the phone up and you look and it's there.
Right.
I mean, back then in the days, if there was a line of duty death somewhere else in the country, we might not hear about it, or if we did, it was a day or two delay. And there was some of them you never even heard about. But up here, if something happened in one of the other New England states, all the locals were pretty tight. But something happened on the West Coast, you didn't know about it. Something in Texas, you didn't hear about it, I mean, things were, I would say, slower because of the communications,
Yeah. That part's certainly been improved with technology.
Yeah.
But
it has its dangerous points too.
It does.
Sometimes that stuff, and as you were saying earlier, trying to keep everything to the truth. We have a term, we call it here in the museum, fractured fairy tales. And that's why it's important when you have a historical event or you have something that happens, and you talk to Mike Dacey about it, because it's got to be etched in stone the way it happened.
Yeah.
Not dress it up to make it look prettier or dress it down to make it,
Yeah.
more accepted by culture or whatever. But
Mhm.
history's history, like it or not. It happened that way. That's the way it happened.
Yeah.
So
I do think that one of the great elements of this job, and it does it to everybody that enters and it works in either side of fire and EMS, but you have to face reality because we have to operate with whatever situation you're given, and so
that's it. Yeah. A lot of people don't want to face reality. A lot of
Yeah.
people want to live in Disneyland.
Yeah.
That's great when you get down Main Street. There's a firehouse here. There's an ice cream shop there. Everybody's dressed up and giggling and laughing and pissing themselves. Reality isn't that way.
That's right.
Reality's nasty some days,
That's right.
And you can't keep turning your head from reality because the boogeyman will come out from underneath the bed and get you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, let's talk about gear for a little bit. I think you used to tell me. I've heard you say store, so I'll ask you the question. But I know I've heard you talk about getting gloves, like work gloves. Was
You didn't get them.
Yeah.
You weren't issued gloves. When you came through the door, you got old boots, an old coat, and somebody's helmet. It's not like today where all the gear is customized to your size. You got shit, and if your boots were too big, they'd say, put some newspaper in them. You had coats, the wrists were down to here, they were, down below your knees. Boots with holes in them, Gloves, no, you didn't get gloves, you didn't get a flashlight. The equipment has come so far ahead and along that it's definitely makes it a lot safer program.
Yeah.
To go out and put yourself in those hazardous atmospheres because your gear fits you. You're not stumbling around with somebody's boots or an old coat and a helmet that you could spin around on your head. So, it seems funny, but Jesus, some of the stuff they give you, you'd say, no. That's why I used to kind of buy my own stuff.
Yeah.
I got my own helmet, and that was another whole thing you could talk about. We went through the helmets because I'd go to Boston and I got a guy down there who was a dealer in fire equipment, and I could get leather helmets for $50. So I'd go down, I'd call, I'd say, hey, anybody want a leather helmet? I'm going to Boston. Yeah, I'd get orders, so I'd go down and get them. Well, one day I was on the fireboat, and all of a sudden the chief's car come up into the parking lot, and the tires were spinning, and I said, well, I guess I'm gonna have another meeting. And I was asked who the hell I thought I was, and am I a helmet salesman, and do I work for a helmet company? And no, the guys want them. I was going in and got them, so.
The glove thing, as I recall, what you were saying, like that was mostly a push through the safety committee, which you were part of, right?
Yes, I was on the starting group of that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't well received from the other side of the table.
Yeah.
Because they thought we were just to create problems. But no, we're just trying to bring our safety standards up to a norm, which were not even addressed before.
Yeah.
We didn't get gloves. And the best thing with the new turnout gear was everybody getting a radio. When I first came in, the only radio was a truck radio.
Yeah.
So if we had messages to get on the fire ground, we were sending runners.
Yeah.
We were always looking up in the window, somebody's yelling down for something. The radios in the office, I got a radio. And eventually everybody had a radio. To me, was probably one of the best improvements in safety.
Yeah.
Because everybody's listening now. And of course, you always get the guy that you want to take the battery out of the radio because he's on it all the time, making no sense and talking when he probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
As I always said, that's why you get 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen, then speak, But the radios, the gloves, you had to get your own. Flashlights, you got your own. That shit disappeared all the time. That's why I always put my own gear away, because I knew where it would be, and I knew it was in my pockets. And you wouldn't believe the number of helmet lights that would taken off your helmet, So, the gear's changed, and that's the best thing, that's going on.
Well, so the next question, every department goes through tough times, budget cuts, big incidents, or tragedy. Can you talk about a period of time when the Portland Fire Department really had to pull together through something extraordinarily difficult? I think you mentioned like the strike.
1976, we were in very bad shape with the city. The city looked at us as a necessary evil. And there was a lot of tension between the local and the city. Negotiations were always at a standstill. There was a lot of bad feelings between both sides. And, when the city manager sits back in his chair when you're asking for war, man, looks out the window and says, well, I don't see anything burning. You know the attitude you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing. In 76, I mean, I'd waited all those years to get in here. I got hired in 75, and now in 76, they're talking about laying us all off. And then the work action started. There was a slowdown where we went to fires, that's all we did. We dropped the hose, we'd leave it, Public Works would pick it up, bring it back, throw it up at Bramhall. But it got to the point
And then you
where...
guys repack it from there?
No, we'd repack it in the street back then
okay.
too. If we were all out of hose, we repacked it there and just went back and waited until the next fire. And we were having some fires during that session too. I mean, there was a lot of animosity just floating around. The guys were pretty tight together though on that, because as the work shortage went, or stoppage, we didn't do anything around the firehouses. We cleaned the bathrooms and the kitchens. We cleaned our personal living space. Other than that, nothing happened. You know, and there was a lot of threats being made. And then I remember as we got closer to the strike date, they hired people from around the area, and they were throwing some makeshift training class together down on Park Ave. And the kick in the ass part was they were paying those people more than they would pay us.
Wow.
So the money was always, and I was naive. I always thought when they said they didn't have the funding, they had the funding, they just didn't want to put it into the fire service. I mean, we'd be at the Ocean Avenue dump all the time, but when this threat of strike was coming on, they went out and buried the dump. They covered it over.
Because they didn't want it to catch fire.
They didn't want to catch fire, and they so that
They're
they
like,
covered it over.
Take care of it.
And they, you know, it was just some of the stuff that was going on, and there was a lot of tension even in the firehouses, you know. Most of the guys were together, but you had, again, your renegades that, and that's another thing too. It's in a future question, but since we're here, we can kind of mix it in. You know, that's one of the things that always pissed me off is if everybody was on the same page and worried about the job as much as they were their personal advancement and stuff, it would be real strong. But when your weak links back then were the guys that were worried about their next promotion or what's in this for me or what can I get out of this, and you know, and I never saw the letters, but I know guys that did. They had some of the guys that were straight up front of the strike stuff, but they found letters down in the office. I won't go. So they were playing a double-edged sword. Riling up the troops, but in the background, they weren't going. They wrote letters to the chief and stuff, and somebody came across that hidden file, and that created some hate and discontent after, because some names got out. And, you know, that brought more attention to the house, you know. But overall...
Was the situation between the city and the threat of the strike, I think you shared earlier, you guys didn't end up striking.
No.
Like night before, union called
off. No, that night, the day we were going to strike, we had a meeting at Bramhall, and they took the final vote, and the vote became, we won't strike.
Okay.
And luckily we didn't, because that night, around midnight, they had a fire on Pinecrest Road, where a father and his daughter died. And you know, when we stop to think about back, if we'd been on strike and that happened, there's probably going to be no repair to the civilians or the citizens,
the relationship,
fire department. Because that happened in Montreal, as I spoke earlier. They had a strike in the 70s, and they lost 7 people during the strike. And then when I was at a meeting, a union meeting with the officials, with some of the guys from the Canadian groups, the Canadian internationals, IFF guys, and I asked them, well, why don't you try to get Montreal? This was now in the 80s, possibly, or maybe even closer to the 90s. And I said, why aren't you, trying to get Montreal back in the IFF? They said, we've got so many lawsuits. Why are we going to inherit that? And that, made a lot of sense. But
what ended up? How did that? So obviously, you guys called off the strike. Had the fatal fire. Unfortunately, 2 people died. When did the relationship with the city? When did that problem get solved? And how did it get solved? The union just negotiated through?
Yeah, it was. And back then they always compared us with the police. Always compared us with the police. Well, look at the police. They're out there doing this. But you stop and think. How often does a cop pull his gun in a life and death situation? Not often back then.
Yeah.
But how many times did we pull a line off the truck that was a life and death situation?
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, you stop and realize it was comparing apples and oranges, but again, that was another tactical movement to pit the two groups against each other too.
Right.
You know, all we asked was parity with the police.
Yeah.
You know, and then, no, you guys, you know, basically you're not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always found that with the fire service, I don't care where you are, when somebody's house is burning, property's going down the shitter,
Yep.
people are trapped. They can't pay you enough to do the job. But when things aren't happening, you're a necessary evil.
Right.
But it's like car insurance. You pay it every year, right?
Yep.
You don't say, well, we're not driving the vehicle this weekend, so we're gonna take the insurance off for the weekend. No, it's 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you pay for, and that's what you get. It's protection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Great. So this is more of a lighthearted question, but I think most of the PFT listeners know that there's a lot of I guess I would say shenanigans and pranks that take place in the
Oh, yeah.
house. What are some of the best pranks, the best jokes, the best whatever that you remember?
Some of them we can't talk about, okay? That's, you know, in today's society, you'd be strung up. So
Yeah.
the one that I think about the best, it'll live forever, is the Jimmy Fox birthdays at Bramhall Station.
I've heard about
Jimmy was the guy. He was
Yeah.
there in all 4 shifts. He lived in the neighborhood. He had Down syndrome, and he was part of the Portland Fire Department as far as we all considered.
Yeah.
He was there every day. If he wasn't there, we were worried about him. You know, we didn't know where he was. So he'd come down in the morning on his way to Goodwill. He'd come home in the afternoon, see us, and he'd come back down at night. And that was, he started hanging around when Bramhall was built in '66.
Wow.
So, I mean, he was right there till I retired. Matter of fact, he was at my retirement party.
Wow.
Came to that, and he was just one of the guys that was there. All groups, they loved him, and he was part of the Portland Fire Department. But his birthday shenanigans was the best because starting in probably September, we had to hear about his birthday. You know,
When was it? What month?
December 12th. Okay, so we had to hear about it start in September, and then we'd calm him down in October, then it would start really ramping up in November. So he knew he'd have a party, and he knew he'd have 4. So the best part was he knew he'd always get a cake from each group, but the cakes started coming out. It would be a balloon cake, it'd be frosted and stuff. And they'd come out with the pan and put it on the table and give him the knife, he'd stick it in. Thing would blow up, frosting and shit flying everywhere. You know, he'd just look at us, so, and he'd be mad, but he always knew there was a second cake in the background somewhere. He had cakes go down the pole hole, he had cakes splattered on the floor, but he always knew he had a backup cake. Well, we went from the fire department for a number of years, and all of a sudden one day, he comes home, and he says, he called me Wayne, look at this. And he had a note, and it was from the people down at Goodwill, and the note basically read, Mrs. Fox, could you please tell us when Jimmy's real birthday is? Because down here, he's starting to ramp him up down here. He's getting 2 or 3 because he's calling the people into all these birthdays, so everybody liked him, and they were giving him birthday parties. So that was probably the thing that will live on forever in the Portland Fire Department, was Jimmy Fox and, you know, his birthdays. You know, he taught a lot of reality to the guys too, because here's a kid that basically had he was challenged, but I wouldn't call it challenge. He didn't worry about anything. He just worried about where his next cake was coming from. But he taught us a lot, you know, about life in general, just the way life was. He didn't have prejudice against anybody.
Yeah.
You know, he liked some people more because they gave more cakes and shirts. But he was just that's probably the best thing that I've ever seen happen. It was consistent over 30-something years here in the Portland Fire Department.
Yeah.
Jimmy Fox at Bramhall Station.
Yeah.
But he was known citywide. Everybody knew him
Yeah.
in the fire department, you know.
So he never went on calls with you guys? He
No.
just stayed at the station?
He'd
You
stay at
guys
the
go on
station,
calls
yeah.
and come back, and he's still
Yeah.
sitting at the table?
Sitting at the table, or they got him away from the desk because he would answer the phone once in a while.
The desk down in the
The
physical
watch
back of
desk,
Bramhall?
yeah. Yeah, once in a while a wife would call, Bramhall Fox. Okay, it was Jimmy. But the one I got a kick out of one day, so you gotta get him away from that desk, because he had this, when UPS used to come in, he used to make you sign for a package. Well, the package got delivered to Bram Hall, and Jimmy's on the floor, because he had a shirt with a patch on it. And Jimmy signed for it. You could tell it was his signature, because he always printed Jim Fox. And we got there, and here's the signature, and somebody goes, Jesus, look, he signed for the package. I says, who's the real one we should have been watching for? Him or the driver? You know, so. But the pranks, the stuff that went on was good. And he brought a lot of enjoyment to the guys. And he was part of the game. He went to birthday parties for guys, kids. He went to Christmas parties. He was there.
Yeah.
You know, he was there every day, you know. And he always had stories. And he was a very good singer. He always sang Christmas songs. They used to give him, I remember one shift gave him a drum set for his birthday. We got a call from the family, please don't do that again. So he was happy in hell. But he was a Portland fireman.
Yeah. But he lived just out behind the
Bram
station
Hall.
on Bram Hall,
Yeah.
on, was it Vaughn or something?
West Street.
On West Street, yeah.
His doctor was a prominent pediatrician.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they lived up there for years. Then his dad passed away, and they sold the house, and his mother moved kind of across the street in the condo. So he was always there. But yeah, I remember we had a third alarm right in his backyard, and he never come out in the morning to see us. Slept through it, so he didn't care. Too early for him. But no,
He's got a schedule.
He's got a schedule to keep. He was going to work, so. But oh yeah, he was always around the firehouse, and he was great. He just he added another whole spin to the fire service.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah.
Jimmy Fox.
He's still, he's got a beautiful kind of shadow box
Yeah.
up in Bram Hall on the wall.
Yeah.
And I hope maybe we'll do a podcast on him, talk to his
Yeah.
family, and kind of get that story documented. Because he
Well,
definitely is a big piece of the.
And he lived a lot longer than he was supposed to.
Oh, really?
And his brother, I was talking to his brother one day about it. They attribute that this gave him a purpose in life to come to that fire station every day.
Yeah.
You know, he was part of he'd eat with us, or he'd eat our food sometimes. He liked cake, chocolate cake, and he was told he couldn't have any, and so we used to wash the trash barrels out there every day. We had the big steel cans, and we had a cake, and we left it out on the counter, and he couldn't eat it. Mama said he's on a diet, he couldn't eat it, so we cut a wedge, and I said, I'm throwing this cake away, and I set it inside the barrel. We went out on our run, we come back, the cake's gone. And I said, did you eat that cake? Nope. Frosting and shit all over his face. Where'd it go? I don't know, not me. So, Then he liked the candy machine, and he hated those zero bars, they were called. And they would wedge the machine so when he put his money in, the lane would fall out with the zero bars. And he would be pissed at animal crackers. You don't give him animal crackers. So. But no, he went to, the guys took him to wrestling. He went everywhere. He was part of the PFD family back then. And it was good. He added a lot of color and flavor to the department. So,
What year did he pass away?
I don't know. I was in Germany. I know I got a call. And
He passed away before you retired?
no, after I retired.
After?
Yeah. And I was in Germany. And I was going to come back. And I talked to his brother. He says, don't stay. And there's another fireman over there with me, two Terrys go over. We got the message. But I called his family and stuff. And he passed away. And they had a fire department funeral for him. So it was good.
Yeah.
And his family was very appreciative. But he was part of our family. So, he became one of the guys. He was one of the team. So, yeah.
So kind of getting back to like the heart of the reason why we're doing the podcast, what's something that you really want the current and future generations of Portland Fire Department to carry forward as part, it could be part of our culture, part of our history, or like what do you want us to keep doing?
Well, keep the tradition. Portland Fire Department's always had a very well known reputation for inside firefighting. Aggressive, very aggressive department. very well trained. Probably, yeah, the aggressiveness, you know, because there's not many, there are departments around, but to have that, to be tagged as aggressive is a good tagging to have, because, you know, you're an inside group, and this fire department's been an inside group since 1768.
Yeah.
I've always been known for that, you know. That's a question, that's a representation you will get just by your job actions when you go to fires.
Right.
You know, you can tell who's an aggressive department, and you can tell who's not an aggressive department. It's just the outcome a lot of times.
Yeah.
But with the cutbacks, though, it makes me nervous now, because you can be aggressive, but you've got to be smarter, because you haven't got the help. You don't have the number of guys, and that's one thing I've always said to people. It's not the amount of trucks that show up, it's the amount of men on the trucks.
Yeah.
You know, when you're carrying 4 or 5 guys, you can be aggressive. How do you think these big cities do it?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they're loaded up with men. They're not pulling in with 3 guys on a truck. Christ, if they were, the streets would be clogged with fire trucks for a fire. Just to get the guys there to do the work. So aggressiveness comes with being smart about how aggressive you can be.
It's not foolish. It's
It's not suicidal. How's that? You're not jumping into something because remember, you got 3 guys on a truck coming, and you're limited now. Now you're down to what? 4 engines, 1 ladder, 3 quints.
Yeah.
Jesus, you don't have that. That's another whole podcast, the quints.
Honestly, it is. I would love to dive into that. It's really, it's an awful topic.
They were good for a town that had 50 guys in 1 base station. That's where they fit.
Yeah.
They don't fit in a city like this.
Yeah.
You know, we had some guys from New Orleans in here, and they were saying they were going to quints. I said, be careful. They said, no, we already got in our union contract that the engine stays. If you want to put a quint beside it to take care of that ladder, but we're not losing that engine, like happened on Munjoy Hill. Yep. That's another whole podcast. You know?
Yeah. We could almost do a whole podcast on the companies that were closed. And
I saw them. I watched them close.
Yeah. And did you say you had 8? There was 8 engines.
Yeah, there was 8 engines, 4 ladders.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Well, you figure when they get to 2 quints, 3
Yeah.
and 4.
Yeah.
You lost engine 8. You lost engine 3. You lost engine 1. You lost engine 4.
Yeah.
You know, so they cut. But you, in the city's building, but they're not sprawling out. They're building up.
Yeah.
And what's it take? It takes people to get that shit up there to the fire floor.
Right.
So I wish
trucks stay on the ground floor.
Yeah, they don't go. They don't drive them up. There's no elevator put in that building to bring a pump up to the 15th floor. I hear what they want to build, a 30-story building now.
Yeah.
So, you know, and when people, and that's another thing too. I mean, we can get carried off, but I just want to put this point in there. When people develop, design places, they don't take into consideration of what happens when there's a fire in there. They don't take any tactical, what's it going to take to put that fire out. You know, and another thing too, and I've seen in the city, which stayed pretty consistent. Firemen come in here, take this job, stay 25, 30 years and maybe more. The city councilors come in here for what, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, promise everything, and they're gone. And when these quints came, we were promised 5 guys, 4 to 5 guys. Well, they went to 4.
Yeah.
And now what are they at? They're 3. So, you know, you get sold a bill of goods, they don't keep their end of the deal.
Right.
And we're looking out the window at a situation that they don't look out.
Yeah.
You know, because we see it. 3 o'clock in the morning, they're not watching, they're not seeing it. But we roll in, we're strapped, we're behind the ball. So that's my...
To that point, I remember at the beginning of this year, the city was engaging with the department on some various stuff, and they pulled some city members came and met with, they were going through all the shifts, all the stations, trying to meet with everybody and get some information. And I still remember sitting in the room up in Munjoy in the training center in the room, and the gentleman that was hosting the meeting, you know, just basically said, start the intro with what department you're part of, how long have you been here, and everyone from the city went through, and then we went all the way through everybody that was on the department. And in the room, the person in the fire department that had been there the least amount of time had been there the same amount as the most senior person in the city. Everybody else in the city was there less
Yeah,
than
they
a
keep
year.
rotating through.
Yeah,
changing,
there's a lot of changeover from that perspective. So it's, that was addressed a lot. That was in those meetings we talked about that. Like, listen, like you can think you're bringing a new perspective, but like this relationship is many years old, like decades and decades old, and it sounds like that's still the same.
It's the same. That'll never change.
Yeah.
That'll never change.
Yeah. John, what time is it? 11:20. 11:20. You have someone coming in pretty soon.
I've got to call them, that's all.
Okay, all right. Well, we're almost done here.
Yep.
Let me just get through the last couple questions, and we'll get you out to moving on to your next appointment. But the fire service culture has changed a lot over time. What are some of the best parts of the fire service that we should continue to carry on into the future?
The safety aspect,
Okay.
in equipment, in training, keeping the attitude positive. Because when a positive attitude goes negative, it's hard to bring it back.
Oh yeah.
And if you keep the positive attitude when the guys come to work, and set the bar, but don't set it so high it's not realistic. Everybody's on the same page. That's what I always said. And put out the rumors, put them out, get rid of them, because rumors. I've seen rumors start in this business, and it's like we used to say. The guy stubs his toe out to engine 8 or ladder 4. By the time he gets in town, his leg's been removed because gangrene set in, and I mean the story's just. There's a fractured fairy tale, as we were talking. Try to keep everything, out front and honest.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're going back to reality. Not everybody's going to like it, but it's reality. And, if you can't face reality, then it's this isn't a job to be in.
Right.
Because it can get pretty brutal even when there's not a fire in some of the houses. I've seen stuff get, guys get pretty pissed off, but keep everything honest and upfront, and don't bullshit the guys. That's the whole thing.
So I know one of the things you talked about previously that we should be proud of with the history and continue on through is training, along with being aggressive towards interior firefighting. As far as the training, you and I were talking earlier, and when you came on in 76, there wasn't much training.
No, put the book on the table, sit around the table for 2 hours, that's training.
Yeah.
The manuals, throw the manuals. I remember them throwing them on the table. Okay, we're training. Yeah, we got another 45 minutes. Okay, training's over. Pick it up, throw it back on the bookshelf.
So training is it's much different now, but we were
going to a lot of fires still.
Yeah.
Don't get that. We were going to fires, so ours was on the job training.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're going to fires like we were back then, and that's what kept the guys interested too, because they knew they were going to a fire. So if there was something new to learn, they were aggressive towards it. They wanted to learn it, And,
when you came in, were the previous generations pretty good? So maybe not in like a back of the station over a book in a prison training, but were they pretty good in the scenario, like explaining to you guys or the new guys what's going on, or was there more of a stoicism between generations?
Yeah, so because when I first came in, the last of the World War II veterans were leaving. I'm relating back to '73 when I was hanging around before I got hired. But then we had the influx of the Vietnam vets coming in.
Yeah.
So I mean, they had already seen the shit. They'd been in it, and so to them, they were already pre-trained mentally to see bad stuff happen.
Yeah.
And then when you're a new guy, you're not exposed to that. That's a big gap in it. You got to fill. How do you get that through that? I mean, there was no debriefings and stuff like that. You just went to the next one. If it was worse than the other one, well, the other one you didn't even think about.
Right.
Now it's this one, So, and there was a lot of stuff. And as far as I see it now with all the mental health stuff, that was never considered back then.
Yeah.
You were told if you can't take it, get the frig out.
Yeah.
That was a nice way to be treated.
I do. I remember kind of figuring that out actually around the time my dad was retiring. One of someone else told me a story about a call that he was on, actually out back here behind Bram Hall. And I remember thinking like, holy cow. And I talked to Dad about it. I was like, what did you guys do after that call? Like, it was basically a couple guys got trapped on the second floor and it looked like they weren't going to come out. And Dad happened to be driving, I think it was engine 4, and he and I think the driver of ladder 6 ended up tossing some ladders on the far side, and the guys got out just in time. But I remember talking about Dad, like, holy cow, we would have probably had there would have been a lot to do about such an event like that in today's.
That was everyday occurrence back then.
Well, yeah, and I was like, what did you do?
Moved on to
like,
the next one. Just
put the
moved
stuff
on to
back
the
and
next
went
one.
back to the station, like to bed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, this is a different time.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It wasn't the debriefings and stuff like that. Although I went to a debriefing after the fire at Congress in Washington Ave, where 4 people were killed, and they set up all the debriefing. You know, the clergy from the church and some other mental health people, and nobody showed up.
Yeah.
And somebody said, why didn't they show up? I said, because they busted their balls that night. I was there with them.
Yeah.
We're lucky we didn't lose guys.
Yeah.
So why are they trying to make the guilt right on the guy's back that did the work?
Yeah.
The guy that should feel guilty is the one that signed the thing to cut another company.
Yeah.
They go home and go to bed. Doesn't bother them. They don't wake up with nightmares.
Right.
But they're the primary cause of shit happening like that.
Yeah.
So, that's the way we get all through a lot of it too. We didn't start the fire. We didn't cut the companies back. We showed up with the team that we had to do the best we could, and we did. So.
Do you, if you guys had questions back then, like you went on a call or something like that, if you were talking to some of those guys that were from the Nam area or World War II area, would they engage kind of like, well, let me show you what to do, or would they like?
You didn't talk about it.
You didn't
talk about it.
But they wouldn't be like, yeah, grab the hose and go around this way next time, because you
No,
completely
it's
botched
just
that.
not really. I mean, if you screwed up, you knew you got screwed up.
And that was
You
it.
get your ass chewed, and that was it. You moved on.
Okay.
So, but no, you didn't. There wasn't a lot of. There was
Yeah.
no critiques.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And then when they started having the critiques, they ended up kind of being a shit show, and then they turned into a joke. And
Yeah.
so I mean, we had a fire on Congress Street, and I pulled in with a rescue, and they asked us, they asked the driver, "What'd you see when you got there?" I saw nachos on sale at 7-Eleven's window, 2 for $1, and that ended the critique, and then it just. Then you get another guy who's painting a picture of how he was the hero at the fire. So again, another fractured fairy tale. So critiques are good, but it depends on who's managing the critique.
Yeah.
And if it turns out to be an ass chewing session, it's no good. So
Yeah. I think we've had some fires as of late, and they've done a very good job with the critiques from my perspective.
Yeah.
But I know you got to get going, so
Okay,
we'll wrap this up.
Okay, sure.
It sounds like we need to do a whole podcast on some of the best fractured fairy tales.
Oh, there's a lot of them out there.
We've got going.
Jesus.
But we'll just throw that on the list of things to go over.
Sure. And we get some other questions. I think we get most of them.
We did. We got through all of them.
Okay, good.
So, thanks so much, Dana.
All right, no problem.
I appreciate you opening up the museum for us and hanging out and answering all our questions. And
Well, I got a guy coming in from the City of New York's museum.
yeah,
He's in town, so he wants to take a look at this. We're proud to show it because this is all our stuff. That's what he said to me on the phone. I heard you got a unique place. I go, yeah, it's all ours.
yeah. It really is. Podcast is ours too. So
Yeah, good.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into the first episode of the All Hot Podcast. The All Hot Podcast exists to provide listeners with value through the free exchange of information. This exchange serves to strengthen generational bonds and preserves the culture of the local 740 and the Portland Fire Department.